whenever it comes time to sell anything to anybody, you're inevitably going to get told no, but most often you're not just going to have somebody say no. They're going to give you some sort of a reason like, oh, maybe later, or if you're in Mexico, mañana, 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 or now's not the right time, or any variation of that. It's going to be kind of like a soft no, which can be really, really frustrating if you're in sales. If you're selling anything, this doesn't have to be coaching, but if we're talking about coaching. And the biggest problem that people make, and what we're going to talk about today, is not going deep enough. And I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. We spoke about this beforehand between us three about how this lack of, call it follow through, this inability to peel back the sales onion results from maybe some internal dialogue, telling ourselves a story that may or may not exist about what the other person thinks about us or how we might appear to who knows who. And so I want to talk about that today. I want to help you overcome that, because in order to help people, you need to be given or granted or earn the opportunity to help somebody. And that always starts with making a sale. Any kind of transformational relationship, the first step is actually making the sale. And so if you don't follow that first step, you're not going to be able to get to the second. And so you got to get through this. And as we've spoken about time and time again, coaching is curiosity. Sales is curiosity. You need to tap into their internal dialogue. You need to tap into their internal dialogue. And so here's the mindset shift that I want to encompass this entire conversation with today, which is you don't sell them. You're simply curious, and then they sell themselves. Amber, do you want to share how this came up? Give a little bit of that story.
Yeah, sure. So I did a call with a student of ours yesterday, and she was struggling with feeling like a lot of her sales calls are unnecessary, or they're not filtering properly. Like she's wasting her time talking to people who aren't interested. And so I was asking her why she felt like they weren't interested. How did they get on the call in the first place, even if they weren't interested?
Why are they talking to you, right?
Yes, exactly. How did that even happen? And so after digging in a little bit, realized that a few things. One is she wasn't guiding the conversation. She was reacting to their questions and not helping them through that process, but also taking first line responses from them and not digging any deeper. So when she pitched her program at the end of a call that she gave me as an example, the person said, well, I know this would help me, but not right now. It would be better later. And then she just dropped it after that. There was no follow-up, no additional questions, anything. And so there was
what do you mean she dropped it? Like the coach dropped it?
The coach dropped it. Yeah, like she didn't push any further to dig into why now isn't a good time, why later would be better, why the program is good. And so
the client said, hey, that sounds great.
Right.
But not right now, basically.
Right. It'd be better later. Okay. Yeah. And then so she felt stuck about how to handle that. And then the call just kind of petered out.
Ren, I'd like to ask you something. But first.
Only if I got theme music.
It's another exciting segment of
There we go.
Ask a Black Guy.
Now I'm ready, John. Go ahead.
Glad we got you some theme music. Go on.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, I mean, your experience is in sales. Like your background is in sales in another industry, in insurance. And now you've come into fitness, which is perhaps known for being much more compassionate selling and much less hard selling. And so you have those two kind of backgrounds, because I feel like a lot of the fear that happens these days is coaches don't want to feel like they're pushy. They don't want to feel like they're pressuring somebody. And so you've had that experience where I'm sure that you met people who taught you to pressure and be pushy. And now you work in fitness and you've kind of found your balance between them. And so I'd love to know where your mind is at. I'd love to ask a black guy. No, I'd love to ask you, and where your mind is at there.
Conveniently, I'm both. Both men and a black guys. You hit the jackpot, buddy.
It's almost like I got a 2-for-1 for my Canadian
right,
pennies.
right. Two for. I love that character on 30 Rock, by the way. So
yeah, how have you met that balance in your own world, in your own head?
yeah, and you're right. So the insurance background that I have is from a mafia style insurance company, and what I mean by mafia style is that everyone in leadership starts with sales. So you earn your way to the next position. So the CEO of that international organization was once an insurance salesperson in that organization. That's how their structure works. And because of that, you don't have a lot of people that were educated in business necessarily. There's a primary street smartness to selling. So they aren't very cultured in business, I'll say. Now, having said that, sure, people try to get me to be pushy. It's not my personality type. And in insurance sales, the same thing that I find works in this business and in coaching is understanding that if you're the type of person that just wants to help people, quote fingers, you can't help any fucking body if you haven't enrolled them in your help. That's the fundamental basis that we have to look at when you're feeling as if you're a bit too pushy. Curiosity is not the same thing as dictating to people that they should do something. Like John mentioned in the opening of the show, what you're essentially doing is getting them to explore the questions that they already have because they already have the answers to these questions. Let me give you some insight out there, young Padawan coaches. Nobody is wondering if they should exercise or not exercise for their health. This is not something that you have to teach someone on an enrollment call. It'd be better, sir or ma'am, if you exercise. They've known that and have been wrestling with that for the last 12 years of their life, if not 20. Nobody is wondering if they should give investment into their own health or should they buy another cell phone. This is not a confusing topic for people. They know these questions and answers. But one thing that we know for sure is if they mention it, it's actionable. If I suggest it, it's coercion. And you have to be curious enough for them to say it in order for them to enroll. And you can't stop at someone saying, maybe later. You have to say, that's interesting. I'd love to know why you think later might be a better time. Just asking that simple of a question causes the person to divulge information that you don't have. I'm going to shut it down there for now, John, but I'm only stopping if I have some outro theme music.
Well, conveniently we do, and thank you for asking.
Amber,
please hit the button.
It's
Thank you very
another
much.
exciting segment of Ask a Black Guy.
I can dig it. Nice.
Moving on. Yeah, I think the first step is to really get them within the conversation to tell you why they're there.
Mm-hmm.
This person is taking time out of their day to talk to you. There is a problem. Now, the question is whether that problem is important enough to them right now to do something about. And what helps me whenever I'm going through my own internal mindfuck during this whole process is to remind myself that I'm not the cause of their problem, but I can be the solution to it. I'm not the reason that they feel a certain way. I'm not the reason that they feel the way that they do. I might not even like the words that they use. I might not think that the problem that they think they have is actually a problem.
Right.
I can't impact any of that. The beginning of their story has already been written, hasn't it? But I can be their coach, I can be their editor to help change their trajectory moving forward. And so my job then, in understanding, number one, that I'm not the cause of their pain, but I can be the solution of it. I can help to be the solution of it, is to understand that change sucks. Change really, really sucks. It is easier not to change. It is fighting inertia the entire time. You're fighting inertia going the other way. Getting somebody to change means changing their natural patterns, means changing their natural beliefs, means changing their habits. And despite all of this stuff that we read about habits, the truth of the matter is most people never change their core habits because it's really hard and because it sucks.
Well, and they serve a purpose, right? And that's the really hard thing, is that even bad habits do some good in some way, shape, or form. It's even if it's a Band-Aid solution at best, it's still a solution that's working in some capacity. And it's very difficult to let that go. And if you don't ask questions to figure out why that is, you're kind of stuck.
I'd like to get a new jingle. This one I think Ashley would be the best to sing. And it's the Ask a White Woman with Feelings jingle.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad the
there's probably
FAA
the,
doesn't
like,
listen to this.
It'll be like basic bitch music or something like that. We'll
Something like that.
We'll ask her.
Something like that. I feel like that would work really, really
Another
well.
day at work.
I'll ask her.
Look forward to that on a future episode of the Obvious Choice podcast, everybody. The Ask a White Woman with Feelings jingle, as we call on Amber. And then I'm gonna need like some very Jewishy, like very throaty intro song that's Ask a Sarcastic Jewish Guy.
Oh my god. Got it. I will be on that.
I love so much that you said Jewishy.
I was talking to, who was I talking to? I was at this conference a couple days ago, right? I was speaking at, and I was talking to somebody there. I can't remember who, but they had a podcast as well. No, they didn't have a podcast. They were the person miking me up before I went on stage. And I don't remember why we were talking about it, but we were talking about basically enabling ourselves to be able to be more free with what we're talking about. And I was like, no. Like the key is you host your own podcast. And you get a white woman from the Bible Belt and a black guy from the U.S. And then you're a white Jewish guy. Because like at that point, you can say whatever you want.
Most of our basics.
Cleared all the boxes.
You just got to check all the boxes and you're fine.
Free.
I mean, my family did
Checks
that.
out.
I'm married to Chinese.
Right.
My brother's married to white Catholic. My sister's married to Hindu. My other brother's gay, married to Filipino with a black child. Like, we're good. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can do anything. Anything.
Oh, that's the 64 box of crayons with the sharpener in the back.
Right wing,
You're
left
set.
wing, center wing. You can't touch us, man.
You're set. Oh.
I guess when it comes to sales, when it comes to this idea of peeling back the sales onion, it has to matter enough to them right now. And the only way for it to matter enough for them right now to take action on is for them to verbalize it themselves and talk about their problem and talk about what they think the solution is, probably even for the first time ever.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they're on the phone with you, they might not really think about why this is as important to them as it might be. I mean, they responded to some inquiry. They are on the phone with you or whatever, talking to you in person, wherever they are. But they may not have repeated it. So over the course of the conversation, one of the things that you said, Ren, earlier is, what about it would work? Was that the one that you said? I have a few listed here, questions like that.
Oh man, so I've got three, John. If I may say all three.
Yeah, let me intro it. So this is not when you're making the sales and they object. Okay?
Right.
This is because by the time that they've objected, you're kind of having to play catch up a little bit, and at that point they've already verbalized that they're not going to do something, and so trying to get them to do that thing is actually I don't know what's the right word here. You're walking uphill, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. It's just like you're swimming upstream effectively, and the objection bearer is just waiting upstream because he knows there's a juicy objection salmon that's about to flail in front of him. He's
A
going to grab you with
juicy,
his big bear paw.
a
Salmon's
juicy,
juicy. It can be juicy.
a
Yeah,
juicy,
juicy.
a juicy.
Not Jewishy, John.
Oh, not Jewishy. Oh, not
We
a
need to-
Jewishy objection.
we got to use our consonants better.
It's like when you meet like a cute girl at the bar and you're not Jewish, and she's like, "No, I have a Jewishy objection." Like she needs to marry a Jewish guy. It's a Jewishy objection.
That's exactly. I can't tell you how many times it's happened to me, John.
Yeah, I'm sure it's happened to you a lot in North Carolina.
That was
So a Jew. It's like when you went to Edmonton and you were the first black person ever to be in
the
Edmonton.
first black person.
One time there was a Jewish person that went to North Carolina. One time,
Right,
And,
once.
Shoshana, and that's probably who you met in the bar.
You were saying?
As I was saying. So over the course of the conversation, as they're telling you why it's important to them, you're asking the questions like, oh, what are you trying to achieve? What are your goals? What are your whatever? This is where you need to peel back the onion. Okay, Ren, I'd like to ask you a question, but before we do that, Amber, please play the song.
Get double intro today.
Exciting segment of Ask a Black Guy.
I like how committed the vocalist is to it. Like,
Who
I
is
don't know
that?
who you found it. Yeah, who is that?
I found him on Fiverr, and he was so excited for this project.
Oh my God, he's so
much fun.
He's so committed. Like it's
Great job.
it's easily discernible that he is enjoying the hell out of recording this.
He
So,
loved it.
so a few things, John, because like you said, I don't want to get the objection. I want to get them to talk about why they're not going to object. That's what I want to get them to
or
say.
even by the time you get the objection, you have their words to say, but
And
you
I give it
told
right
me
back.
that. Yes.
So one of the major ones that I like to ask is, why do you think it isn't working? Right? Because people don't really verbalize the fact that they're failing at this. And a lot of times the potential client will gaslight you into thinking it's no big deal and I can do it anytime I want. Right? Oh, I know all about this. Anytime. No, why do you think it's not working? And when people verbalize that, you can see a shift in how they approach the rest of the time. Well, I don't know. I'm trying to, right? And I dig in twice usually because they may give a shallow answer the first time. And I just don't know the stuff. Okay, but you understand that Apple's better for you than a hamburger. Why do you think it's not working? Right? I don't let them get away with just shallowly answering that question because I want them to create a dialogue that they have to hear themselves out loud say, I cannot do this, and I don't know how to fix it. The second question I like to ask is, how long have you been at this? Right? Since the time you felt like you wanted to make these changes, how long has it been? And I don't care if they say 3 weeks or 3 years or 3 decades, I'm going to lean into the time. I'll say, wow, 3 weeks? You've been at this 3 weeks, nearly a month, and you haven't been able to figure this out. How does that feel? 3 decades? Wow, I've been out of college for 30 years and I feel old. That's a long time. What do you feel about having done
Add a
this?
disclaimer to that question.
Yeah,
That
for 30 years, because they haven't usually paid attention to the fact of how fast time flies. It's like people who don't have kids like me that don't get to see your kids every day. I see them once they're an infant. I see them the next time and they're Calvin's selling empanadas in Mexico. Like, damn, that time went by fast, and people don't realize that. And the third most powerful question that I think this is the most powerful is, why now? Why is this important to you now? And and this question is important because it's going to head off the delay at the end. But there's a specific way that I ask this question. I'll say, why now? Why do you think it's important now? And I'm watching out for the shallow answer. Well, I'm not getting any younger. Oh, okay, I get that. That kind of makes sense. I'll stutter through that. That kind of makes sense. But no, seriously, why now? When I ask the second time, I get the deep answer. Yeah. I'm right around the age that I was when my dad died of a heart attack, man. And I can't do that to him. Like, yeah, I completely understand that, man. It sounds like this is important to you to get squared away as soon as possible. Is that correct? Second time, I'm asking about why now. And they say yes. And then I'll ask a third time. So if I'm understanding correctly, you say now is 100% exactly the right time for you to do this. I'm very definitive with that statement. I don't want to warble at all, waffle at all. I want to express it in that exact. So you're saying now is 100% exactly the right time for you to do this. And the fourth time, I'll ask them to explain what makes you say that.
And they might say no.
They might say no, but I know that up front. It's okay because here's another thing. I think we're fearful of the information in an enrollment situation, so we don't ask for any of it because we don't want any to be bad. But the quote unquote bad information is what's going to save my time and my life. They say, no, I don't think it's the right time. I really don't. Hey, what makes you say that? Right? I'm going to get the answer eventually, but oftentimes, and salespeople don't like to hear this, and people who teach sales don't like to say this, but sometimes you just spend too much damn time on a no, right? Find your way to a no and realize it's a no and set them up with whatever freebie you've got, whatever thing you have to keep them in your orbit.
And often, I was just going to say that, and often a no is not a no ever. It's just a no right now, and there's a very legitimate reason. What you're doing here is you're closing the objection window.
Yes.
Right. You know that it has to be very important for them right now. You know that has to be clear, that they have to say it, that they have to volunteer that information.
Say it.
And if they don't say it, you need to know why. And that might be something where it's like, let's revisit this in 3 months. It might be a distinct date. Our team gets this a lot with the online trainer mentorship on the phone. We don't pressure people into joining. A lot of the time, the students who join OTM are people who we spoke to on the phone who have been in the process for months or even in some case a year or 2 years. And it's because, a common one that we get are people who are winding down their gyms. They started a gym when they were a little bit younger. They had success in their gym because they were in a neighborhood and they were an expert practitioner, but now they've decided maybe they have kids, they want a little bit more time, or maybe they want to travel, or some combination of both. And so they either want to step away from their gym completely and sell their gym, or they want to put something in place in their gym of personal operations so that they can step away from it. And so they're looking at online as a supplement or replacement, right? And so they're not ready yet because they have to put that place in at their gym. And what our team does is they don't pressure them. They figure out when that stuff's going to be in place, and they work with that person to help that person and coach that person with what they need to put into place. And then they check back in. That's actually, that's one of the keys to the sales pro. So what you're doing here, Ren, is two things, right? Number one is you're closing the objection window so that when it comes time to do the price drop, you're going to be the one who, that's not going to impact it. But the other thing that you're doing is identifying if there is a real objection,
right?
And then not wasting your time with the rest of it and figuring out the next moves really, really quickly. What I want to add,
one more thing.
Yeah, go for it. And then I want to add some other questions to your going deeper, because I think that there's other ways to go deeper as well.
Absolutely. The appropriate response to an objection is not a rebuttal, because I see this happen a lot with salespeople. Like, you feel like you need to have something clever to say back to the objection. The appropriate response to almost every objection is a curious question.
Yes.
Right. And if you want to level it up even more, an agreement. I had explained to me that we're on two sides of a table. And when you when you rebuttal someone's objection, effectively what you're doing is you're reaching across the table, grabbing them by the shirt collar and trying to pull them to your side. First, you get up, walk around, sit beside them and say, I've never been on this side of the table. Now I have a better understanding of what your view is like. Hey, do you want to check out the other side of the table with me? And then you ask them a question, right? So don't feel like you have to have these clever comebacks. When they say, I feel like I need to think about it, just say, that's very interesting. Tell me more about that. What else would you like to think about? Or, I'm interested in knowing what made you say that. Just be curious. It's better, and you get quick example, I've had somebody tell me, I need to think about that. And I'll say, okay, I completely understand that. It's a big decision. I'm curious, what made you say that? Oh, because I don't know if I'm going to put it on my MasterCard or American Express. I got a whole sale there.
Yeah.
But I could have gone into, well, you don't need to think it's a big decision and you got to do this. And when I think about things, I think about like, that's a waste of your time.
All that they're figuring out is how they're going to pay you.
How they're going to pay. That's it. And you just ask the question. So I digress.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, five quick questions to go deeper. Like, you can ask whichever ones feel right in your language. Mm-hmm. And it might feel right in the conversation, but like, can you elaborate on that? How do you mean? Can you tell me more about that? Why do you find that frustrating? Why is that important to you? Mm-hmm. But why is that important to you right now? Very, very quick. But what I like doing also, and this is, I mean, what we're kind of talking about here is, I wouldn't say quite sales 101. I would say maybe like sales 202, Mm-hmm. But graduate level sales is having in your arsenal a series of questions that allow the person that you're talking to peel back their own onion in different ways, in enabling them to verbalize things that they're thinking in ways that they have not verbalized them before. Mm-hmm. And so the way that you ask the question is very important. For example, how long has this been an issue for you? So what have you tried so far to solve this? Mm-hmm. Or one of my favorite ones, actually, particularly if you're speaking to like parents, this type of question works really, really well. What kinds of things have you missed out on because of whatever they told you? Oh, what kinds of things are you worried that you might miss out on if you don't solve? Mm-hmm. Or a different way of saying it, has your weight, has your worries about high blood pressure, has your whatever, started to affect your personal life? Oh, how so? Can you elaborate on that? Mm-hmm. Oh, what do you mean? Why is that important to you? That's like 7 questions.
Yeah.
They're so good. These questions are so good because as salespeople, we underestimate the fact that most people have created coping mechanisms for some of the worst shit that they deal with on a daily basis.
Ooh, say that again. Say that again.
Most people have developed coping mechanisms to deal with some of the worst shit they deal with on a daily basis. It's not top of mind for them. Like it's not, I'll get women who will eventually tell me, yeah, my friends asked me to go out the last 3 weekends, but I haven't because I don't feel comfortable in any of my clothes, right? She's tolerating, and that's a shallow example, and I don't mean to generalize all women.
But that is an example that you will hear on the call. And so what do you say to that?
It's a thing.
Depending on who you are and your comfort level, here's a follow-up question that you might. So
how does that make you feel?
How much longer can you honestly sustain this?
Yes.
Now again, comfort level. You might not be comfortable to go that deep with that much intensity, and the tonality with which you ask the question does impact it. But this person is coming to you for a reason. They have a real pain. You can help them with that pain. Therefore, my belief is that it is kind of your responsibility to push a little bit. And I don't think that that's high pressure sales. I don't think that that is in any way disingenuous. I think it's your responsibility.
Well, if you think too, a lot of people are verbal processors. Like for me, I think better when I can talk out loud. And if I haven't had the opportunity to do that, then I haven't been able to really dig into anything. And so for helping people think through these things, even that conversation is helping them. Yeah. So if they haven't had the opportunity to talk to other people about what they're wanting and why they do what they do and all of that stuff, they haven't had an opportunity to dig in. Mm-hmm. So like you're giving them a gift by helping them process their thoughts.
That's so true. If nothing else, they get to say it out loud. Hell, John wrote a whole book doing that here. We watched him do that for like 30 or 40 episodes. He was like, "Hey, I'm gonna say this. What do you think about it?" Actually, now that I said it, I don't like the way it sounds. Let me scratch that off. I
100%.
mean, that's such a helpful, considerate way to put it, Amber.
It will be
We
so
really
interesting to listen back to those chapters and
right,
see how much they've changed as a result,
right,
largely
right.
of our conversations. But
That's a good point.
I think there's one element that we haven't hit on yet in this conversation. Can you guess what it is? Maybe there's
Oh,
more, but there's one that's coming up to me. Once you ask a question,
shut up.
you shut the fuck up. Once they finish answering a question, you shut the fuck up for a minimum of a count of 2.
Mm-hmm.
And you let the silence just sit there. I can't tell you how many times when I was selling training in person for my own training, where I would ask them something like, if they said to me, oh yeah, no, I really, really enjoyed talking to you. Look, I'm definitely going to do this. Can I call you next week? Or something about later, like, oh, I'm definitely going to do this later, but whatever. And I would just say, totally, really, really, I really, really enjoyed getting to know you. So happy that Brian put us in touch. What a joy. I'm curious, if you don't mind, what about later makes it a better time? The amount of people that have talked themselves into starting now, but what always happens every single time that happened, somebody would say something and it would be very, very superficial. Oh, my kid's still in school and blah, 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 blah. And I just kind of nod. And I'd wait a couple seconds and it would be so awkward. For me, I don't know if it was awkward for anybody else. I'd feel awkward. Be sweating in my pits, Be sweating in my pits.
Pit sweater.
And this was old school before they made like good gym apparel. So that old school like dry fit stuff. I had to change my shirt 3 times over the course of the day. It was disgusting. And then I'd have an old shaker cup and it was the same thing. And it would just be the old protein powder. But what would happen inevitably is somebody would make up and they'd almost catch themselves at that point because we'd gotten relatively deep. And they gain a little bit of trust with me over the course of the conversation. And often I think probably they had said things to me that they hadn't even said to their spouse yet. They haven't admitted to themselves yet. And so there's a lot of trust that results in that. And so inevitably what happens when I'm quiet, after I ask them a question like that, and I'm quiet, is they actually start talking themselves out of their own internal bullshit. And I don't have to say anything. Sometimes, if there's a couple seconds where it's silence, I might ask them like, oh, why is that? Like very, very quick, just kind of a prompt to continue. But yeah, you know what? There's never going to be a better time. Oh, all right, Barbara, so you want to do this? Yeah, let's do it. All right, cool. 20 or 50 sessions. Like, God, the amount of times that happened. Because you know what? Later is always too late. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's your little sentence for the day. Later is always too late. That's a tweet if I've ever seen one.
There you go. So when I mentioned Todd Herman to you earlier today,
Yep.
Alter Ego is one of my favorite books.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's actually something I use quite a bit. And so especially for like sales situations, like I think about like the stereotypical therapist that I see in like movies and stuff. And like they often do that. They're quiet for a minute. They're, you know, thinking about their body language and all of that kind of stuff. And so I kind of mentally put myself in that kind of position because it helps me slow down, where Amber by herself is like nervous, anxious, moves around a lot and whatever. But when I get into like my mental image of what a therapist is, it helps me slow down. It calms me down. It helps me shut up, you know, that kind of stuff. So for people struggling, that might be something to think about is who do you want to emulate and how can you embody that? And if that would potentially help, because that's one of the things I have to do, because otherwise Amber's bouncing off the walls on sales calls.
I guess, I mean, what I always think too, and what I always come back to in these types of conversations is that you could guess what their problem is. And a lot of advertising, instruction teachings, a lot of marketing teachings will teach ways to basically research and work backwards and like try to figure out what their number one problem is and highlight that with their copy. I don't think you need to, though. Because what a question does is a question taps into their own internal dialogue. So you could guess what their problem is, and you might be right some of the time, but you don't even need to, and you certainly won't be able to use their words. And even if you can guess, and even if you can use their words, they're still not the one saying it. It's still better for them to be the one bringing it up in their head and saying it, because then they're making a commitment to themselves. And it's just a natural, I mean, this is in, I don't know, one of the persuasion books, maybe Predictably Irrational, probably. Can't remember which one it is. Probably it's a Cialdini thing, where once somebody says something about themselves, they're naturally driven to reinforce that.
They want to be consistent. I just listened to something about this earlier today. I think it's like the consistency principle or something like that.
It's probably consistency heuristic or consistency bias or one of those.
Like
yeah. Huh.
That's why those questions work so well at the beginning, because the average human is not going to feel comfortable at all saying, yeah, this is exactly 100% the right time, because this was the year that my father died of that heart attack. And I remember how hard the next Halloween was because he used to take it. And I refuse to do that to my kids. They're not going to do that. And typically at the end say, well, I need to think a little bit more about it, because it drives against that consistency bias, that consistency heuristic. And most people, you have to understand that in this concentrated amount of time, it's got a very concentrated amount of time. Most people haven't heard out loud that much of their bullshit in such a short amount of time. They almost talk themselves into realizing how ridiculous this thought pattern is. Like,
Say that again. Say that again. That was well stated.
Most people have not heard this amount of their own bullshit in such a concentrated period of time. Yeah. And you feel dumber and dumber for the things that you continue to say. As you hear it out loud, you're building your own case for noticing what an idiot you are. Yeah. And that's unusual. They may mention this flippantly to somebody or in a conversation, but most people haven't sat down for 30, 45 minutes and consistently argued against their own improvement from a basis of nothing, absolutely no basis, and heard it from themselves for this amount of time. It creates an uneasiness that if you don't force, it's sort of like martial arts, using their momentum against them. You just have to move a little bit out of the way once that momentum starts to pick up. So asking the questions is so much more important than telling them things they should do. And I think it's easy to miss that.
And this is why it's so important to surround yourself with people that, even if they don't call you out on your bullshit, they ask you the right kind of questions, or they challenge you in the right kind of way that just makes you better and makes you see your own bullshit. I do that with this podcast, where I'm being forced to talk about the things that I'm writing, that I'm putting in my books. I'm being forced to tell the stories and try to communicate the ideas and present on them. I gave a talk 2 days ago on Saturday. There was 800 people there. And It was the first time I'd ever given this talk. But the subject was discovering you easy, or the subject was people who buy lots. But it was basically a chapter. I ran through a lot of the examples and philosophy from the Discovering You Easy chapter of the Obvious Choice book that's coming out that you can pre-order on Amazon. And in that chapter, basically, it's one central philosophy that simplifies hiring, getting more clients, and generating referrals. And it was the first time I'd given that talk. I knew it like the back of my hand because I've presented that multiple times already on here, because you guys have checked me on that, because I've worked on that material so much. And it's the same with the editorial team that I'm working with, where I can't bullshit myself because I can't bullshit them. A lot of people have been asking me why I went with a conventional publisher and not self-published anymore. And one of the key things I tell them is there is a very distinct reason why the majority of self-published books are steaming piles of absolute shit. And the reason is not that the authors are worse. The reason is quite simply, in a self-published book, there aren't enough people that have invested interest in that product that are willing to call you out on your shit. Mm-hmm. That fact check you. They looked into every single story. They looked into every single claim. Every single one. To the point where it was an aside story that I told. I talked about Bulletproof Coffee, and I talked about how Bulletproof Coffee made the claim that their coffee eliminated the mycotoxins, which are fungi that's like nasty stuff inherent in coffee production. And that's why their coffee was better, and that's one of the reasons why they charge more for their coffee. And I didn't tell that to say it's a bad company or anything like that. I actually told that to talk about how savvy marketers they are. It was me explaining what I call the bed of nails paradox, which is you got to find your one nail, and the one nail that you market your thing off of actually could be something that everybody else in your industry might already know or even do, but nobody has had the approach yet to market that. There's an information asymmetry, right? People in the know this. People not in the know don't. Because what's also, so that is true. That's what Bulletproof did. What is also true, though, is that mycotoxins have been eliminated in all coffee that's been brought into the developing world for the last 50 years, since the 1970s. All the other coffee producers are already knowing this, but Bulletproof marketed on them. Anyway, the reason that I tell you that is the copy editor called me out on that story and said, I went through all of Bulletproof Coffee's marketing materials and they don't once mention mycotoxins. I don't think we can include this. And I, of course, went back to the Internet Wayback Machine to their original marketing for their coffee. And I found when they first launched it where most of their marketing was centered around that claim and sent that to them, right? And so that's the appendix, that's the source. So fine, of course, yeah, no, totally cool. But like you would never get that amount of oversight in a self-published book. And so as a result, stuff sneaks in. There's bullshit. There's just too much bullshit. And so whatever it is that you want to do, whatever it is that you want to achieve, figure out a way to surround yourself with people. Because if you want to be great, you need to be surrounded by people that are going to challenge you and force you to be called out either by yourself or other people on your bullshit. Now, that might be a podcast like what I do, the workshop material. That might be an editorial team. That might be a program like the Online Trainer Mentorship. A lot of what we do is we help people get out of their own head and see the forest from the trees. You know, you're too close to your own thing. You're overthinking it. You don't actually know that to be true. Have you collected evidence that this person actually hates you or thinks you look stupid? Or is this person quite literally just figuring out which credit card to put the payment on?
Right.
You don't know.
Man.
You don't know. I'm good. You guys good? I'm good.
It's snack time.
Snack time. Snack time. Uh, there is a 2-episode series that I want to recommend to you to listen to right now. So you're going to scroll back a little bit, not too much, and check out episodes 216 and 219. So this is the 2-part series on how to scale coaching. Scaling coaching comes down to, it's not a marketing thing, it's not an ad thing, it's actually figuring out how to build a scalable product. It comes down to nailing the core functionality of the product and service, and you do need to productize your service if you want to scale it. Comes down to nailing the core functionality of what that thing is. That's the only way that you can scale it. So we start there. And then I talk about, of course, the marketing, the lead gen, the sales, and of course, at the end, the hiring. So this is a 2-part series. It's very detailed. You'll probably want to listen to it once, kind of get some ideas, and then you might want to go back through it with a notepad, to be honest. And those are episodes 216 is part 1, 219 is part 2. Check those out. Hope you love them. As always, please rate the podcast on Spotify. Just beside the gear icon, there's 3 dots. Hit those 3 dots, rate, give it 5 stars. Love you. And we'll talk soon.